I showed up to work one day, HR was there, and suddenly I didn't have the job. And that was a really big wake-up call for me. And I was like, I don't want to live my life climbing and grinding and like trying to get to a place that doesn't really exist.
The more masks that I wear, the heavier I feel, and it's harder to navigate life.
This life is hard, and it's great if you can have someone that's willing to say, hey, I'm all in with you, and I know it's going to be up and down and all around, but we've got each other. The nature of life is up and down, and if we get too fixated on what could go wrong, absolutely, we're going to manifest some tough stuff.
We can define power for ourselves. Just like that ex, he defined his power in that way.
If you want love, love people. Even like money, if you want money, give money. It's law of reciprocity. It's opening the energy channels. The second time, like I was literally driving and he was pulling out of like a parking lot, and like for whatever reason, I just like looked to the right and like there he was.
Welcome everyone. My name is Alejandro Santillan, and today we have Kristine. We're going to interview her. She's actually someone that I know. I went to what would you call it? It's not a workshop. It's more of a psychedelic
Of course.
experience. And that's where I met Kristine. I thought she was really cool. And we talked a lot about business. We talked a lot about our experience with the psychedelic experience that we had. But Kristine, I want to thank you again for being here. So before we get started, I would like to know if you can let us know your background. Before we start, also Kristine is a psychedelic coach that helps entrepreneurs get unstuck and feel less anxious and create the life desire with confidence and clarity. I read that from her bio. So
I love how you read it.
So yeah, give us a breakdown who Kristine is.
Yeah, thanks, Alejandro, and thanks for having me on. It was really great to spend that weekend with you. I think the official title of the weekend was Psychedelic
Mhm.
Leadership Immersion, which sounds
Mhm.
pretty cool. So it was really great to meet you and connect with you. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed our drive back to the airport. I got so much out of that like hour and a half drive that we had, and I'm really grateful to know you. So. Yeah, I'm a psychedelic coach, and I have been in the healing space for a little over 8 years. I've been teaching yoga. I've been hosting my own retreats. I've been doing coaching on and off for a couple years, and yeah, I've lived. I feel like I've lived many lifetimes. Out of college, I started working for a corporation where I was climbing the corporate ladder in marketing and sales, and just learned a lot about business, and I really always embraced the entrepreneurship spirit, and I wanted to learn all facets of the business that I was in. And I was in my 20s working hard, and learned some really important lessons. I showed up to work one day, HR was there, and suddenly I didn't have the job that I had been working so hard towards for the last 6.5 years. So turns out my boss was a not so good guy, and he was doing some things that I truthfully probably knew about, but kind of was looking the other way because I was so focused on my career and getting ahead. And that was a really big wake up call for me. And I was like, I don't want to live my life, climbing and grinding and like trying to get to a place that doesn't really exist. So that's when I made a really big pivot into yoga and dove all into yoga teacher training. Fell in love with healing and holistic healing and practices, and then got right back into the business side of it. Started managing yoga studios and seeing how incredible it is to infuse business with holistic practices and healing and movement. And that took me to Los Angeles, where I got to open a brand new studio. And again, learn so much about what it is and what it is to open a studio and run a studio and just be involved in every level of business. So I moved to LA about 5 years ago, which was right before the pandemic. And I packed everything in my car, took my dog Riley, and we drove cross country. And yeah, opened this studio. COVID happened, and I was all by myself, and I had to like kind of figure out who I was. I was here by myself without any family. I had a few friends, and then I just lost my job. So I started something called Dynamic Flow, and I started teaching yoga online. And again, just started to build again and figure out what that would look like. Once the studios reopened, I went back into that life. However, I realized how much I had grown as a person and that I wasn't the same person I was when I first moved to LA. I started dating my former partner, and he introduced me to psychedelics. So it's been about 4 years since I had my first mushroom journey on the south end of Venice Beach. It was beautiful. It was like 5 a.m. in the morning, and I was chatting with God and watching the ocean and watching the world wake up, and it was just an incredibly beautiful experience. So for me, psychedelics has always been about healing and getting closer to a higher power and getting closer to yourself. A couple months after that first experience, I had my first heroic dose, or like a big macro experience, and that's when I really realized my capacity to hold space and to help others heal. And it just kind of continued to go from there. About 2 years ago, I finally decided to leave corporate yoga and just start to dabble fully in myself, which I know is a big decision for a lot of people, right? That decision to say, okay, I've learned everything I can from my profession, and now it's time to take a step and believe in me. And so I just moved in with my former partner, and it felt like all the pieces were in place, but life sure is something. And just as everything was moving forward, I was having my second retreat. I had launched my podcast. I was like, okay, I think I have something here. My personal life really took a tumble and fell apart. And that's when I got into microdosing, started microdosing almost a year ago, and just really infused spirituality, sacred ritual into the practice, and started once again to put my life back together. So um, now I've generated everything into my business where I help people use microdosing to create the next chapter. Because as I just shared with you, I've created a lot of new chapters in my life. And I think that microdosing and psychedelics specifically have a lot of power and potential to help us get clear, to help us move with intention and move with clarity, so that maybe we don't have to create too many more chapters, or maybe we find a chapter that we really fall in love with and we have the confidence to bring it into reality.
Is this where we close the book or?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. I think we're like maybe
Okay, part two.
like part two of the book.
So I was listening to your podcast and you said you were working on a book.
I was, yeah.
What chapter are you in right now?
Oh my goodness. So I started the book 2 years ago. I went to Peru and I did ayahuasca. And after that, I went to Costa Rica and I hunkered down in this cozy Airbnb and I wrote 55,000 pages of a book. And when I was writing it, I realized I was in an abusive, toxic relationship.
Mm,
And so I have this book and I've gone back to it a couple times and I love it. But it has to be completely rewritten because I'm out of that relationship now. And I want to rewrite it through the lens of like, here was the evidence, like, don't
mhm,
ignore it. And like, also, again, like, I think part two is where we're in because I've realized it. And the last year of my life has been one of the most challenging years of my life. And now, like, all the pieces are there to like have the really beautiful ending,
mhm.
right? Because we have to have a good ending for the book. And I don't know if it has a good ending
Well,
yet.
we have tons of movies that don't have that happy ending either.
That's
And
true.
do we just like neglect those movies? I don't
Mm,
know.
no.
You're like, it's not the Disney that I grew up with, you know? It's
Yeah.
kind of like Frozen. Do you remember Frozen when, I thought that the girl was gonna go with the
Yeah.
guy,
Okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, 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 whoa. She went with the sister, which makes sense, it's a biological sister, right? but that was a crazy ending, I must say.
Yeah, so maybe I choose myself and that's the happy ending.
You're like,
Yeah.
my world has twisted because now I'm in love with myself and I don't need a partner. Hmm. Interesting.
Don't need any y'all. Yeah, see that doesn't
See, that's the thing
mm,
though. What is
yeah.
it that resonates with you? I think everyone is
Mm,
individual. They all have their own belief system, the way they grew up. And I would like to ask you, like, what is your dreams and what is true for you?
mm, thank you. Yeah, so um you're asking like what do I ultimately hope that happy ending looks like?
Correct.
Yeah, so for me it's been it's been abstract for a little bit, but generally, yeah, I do see myself in partnership with someone because I think love is honestly one of the coolest things you can experience as a human. And to build like home and family with someone sounds just like the most wonderful, lovely
Hmm.
thing. Because this life is hard, and like it's great if you can have someone that's that's willing to say, "Hey, I'm all in with you, and I know it's going to be up and down and all around, but we've got each other." And so, yeah, that's definitely like one of the top priorities. Although, like right now, my primary focus is my business because it has taken so many twists and turns, and I feel with psychedelics and the process that I've created that it's something I really love. And so I want to give my full time and attention into making it like a sustainable business and a prosperous business. And so I think that's in the happy ending. And then I think also just like, yeah, just more time, more freedom to like move around. You and I have talked about that and like see more of the world, spend more time with my family in Wisconsin, my dog Riley in Wisconsin, and yeah, so to feel grounded but also free.
The way you talk is like a poem.
Thank you. That's very nice. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful
And I
compliment.
and I wish to have that
Yeah,
sometime. And maybe that's what I do have. I just don't notice it.
I think so. I enjoy listening to you speak.
Well, thank you. There's a question I have for you. So when it comes to spirituality,
Hmm.
did it start when you got into yoga? Like what do you call it? Like what spiritual people would say, your great awakening.
Yeah. Um, are you into astrology at all?
So when I was listening to your dynamic podcasts, you were talking about the moon and then the eclipse, and all I'm hearing is codes, numbers,
Yeah.
numerology, codes, 555, 957. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not so versed, but I do find it fascinating sometimes, yes. But go on
Yeah.
for the people that might know about it.
Astrology is really just like a lens through which you can view the world. And
Mhm.
I don't claim to be an astrologer, but I'm passionately curious about it. And I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of like the major stuff. And in, so when you're born, when Alejandro was born, there was a blueprint of the sky. And the sky was exactly like that. And it may not ever be like that again. And so when we look at your birth chart, we can see certain placements. Um, One of the major things in astrology is called a Saturn returns. And so this usually comes between ages 28 and 30. And so basically, what it means is where Saturn was when you were born, it takes Saturn 28 to 30 years to make a complete orbit to come back to that position. Saturn being the planet of systems and structures, karmic lessons, it's known to like be a grumpy planet. It's not like a fun planet. So it's going to come around and course correct you. So, can I ask how old you are?
You don't ask a man his age.
Age is just a number.
I'm playing. I'm 34.
Okay, so you've already gone through your Saturn returns. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, so maybe if you think about where you were 4 or 5 years ago, if there was like a significant event that could have shaped you, that was likely your Saturn returns. So I say all this because my Saturn returns was that upheaval, that wake up call that I went through at my job when I went into yoga. And I did dive all into yoga, and I learned that I loved the physicality of the practice. And what I didn't expect was the spiritual journey that would unfold. So I think, yes, it was yoga. And yes, it was also my Saturn return moving me in the direction of spirituality because I feel very connected to my spiritual side and to a greater power and to the forces of the universe.
Something comes up when you talk about this manifestations.
Mm.
What if, just curious, because I don't know none about this, but what if you look at your chart and you, like, for instance, something bad's going to happen and you kind of manifest that into your life versus not even looking at it and let your life happen.
Mhm.
It's almost like conscious, unconscious. What are your thoughts about that?
Ooh, I have chills. No, I think that that's a really, 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 really good point
Hmm.
because there is a lot of information out there. And I'm actually working with someone right now, a client, and I feel like this conversation is so impactful or so right on the money
Hmm.
with what I'm trying to work through with this person. Because, I mean, the nature of life is up and down. And if we get too fixated on what could go wrong, absolutely, we're going to manifest some tough stuff.
Hmm.
And with Saturn returns, it doesn't have to be bad. For example, like if you are on your intended path, like you could have a really easeful Saturn returns. And I know people who have done that as well. And it's only when we're not living authentically that things tend to course correct. I think that the planets, while they are energy, they don't force things to happen. It's just all about knowing the energy and how we navigate the energy with this knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, I think.
Yeah.
It's complicated stuff.
Because there's also something called a Jupiter return. And Jupiter is a really lovely planet. It's the planet of good fortune and abundance. And that comes around every 36 years. So, through the same lens, if we're excited about this Jupiter returns, so you're approaching yours,
Hmm.
I would so love to look at your chart and see what house it's impacting so you know where you might see some abundance coming in.
Hmm.
Like you can work with that energy because you've got Jupiter on your side.
Hmm.
But like, isn't it interesting how as society we tend to gravitate towards the things that are bad? And that might just be a little bit of human nature.
Yeah, yeah, it can be addicting as well when you're in that low vibration.
Absolutely. Yeah, because then you almost, you're like, oh, see, it didn't work again, or oh, something bad happened again. And people do like self-fulfilling prophecy. They do perpetuate that energy because manifestation is really just a reflection of the internal energy.
Hmm.
And it takes 17 seconds to cast a vibration into the universe. So if you're ruminating on something for longer than 17 seconds, you can definitely expect to have that energy come back. And I mean, this is physics. I forget which law it is,
Hmm.
but every action has its equal opposite reaction. Energy feeds off each other. So what you give out is what you get back.
it also goes back to everything is a mirror.
Yeah.
What's that saying? Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want love, love people, you
Hmm.
know? Even like money, if you want money, give money. It's law of reciprocity. Um, it's opening the energy channels. But I think a lot of us get so afraid because we've been hurt.
Hmm.
And so when our hearts are hurt, our minds kick in. And our minds are great at understanding this very physical world that we live in and helping us to like get from point A to point B and navigate the different dynamics of this physical realm. But it also like keeps us safe. And I think that's something you and I experienced at the psychedelic leadership immersion is like we really got into our hearts
Hmm.
and we realized the truth of the world and what's possible when we operate from that heart space.
Yeah. I think you I think you seen me go haywire that one time when I was
It was awesome.
in my psychedelic journey, how I landed on my knees and I just freaking opened my arms out and I just received all that love. It was just amazing. So
It
yes.
was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful to witness. I felt it.
Hmm.
I'll never forget it either.
It's imprinted now in your mind forever.
Yes.
You'll never
Yeah.
forget me, Christine. Never.
Never.
Let's see. Another question I have for you is what does success mean to you?
Aw, thank you. I
Hmm.
ask everyone that. Yeah, success means to me that you are showing up for yourself every day and doing the things that you know are contributing to your long-term health and happiness. And so if you can feel successful every single day, then again, energy like attracts like, right? You're going to be successful.
And that reminds me when you were doing your podcast, you talked about how your journey would be to like you would build your journey up and then it would collapse kind of thing. It was almost
Mm,
like I was seeing a rebuilding collapsing, a rebuilding collapsing.
mm,
And so I can definitely see how you were able to be successful multiple times in your lives.
mm.
It's like reborn again, die, reborn again. And I find that to be fascinating. And I think is that why you create that podcast? Is because of your life experiences?
Thank you. I just want to like simmer on that. Like I've never had anyone reflect that to me
Hmm.
before, and I think that that's really beautiful. And yeah, life sure is a spiral, and I think one thing you learn is that like the same lessons keep coming around and around again until we learn them and evolve. And I think that that's definitely what's happened. And I started the podcast because I think what you're doing is great. I think a podcast is a really great tool to connect with an audience on a deeper level. And like, it's a tangible, it's almost like, what's that word? Like when people used to like dig holes in the ground and put like boxes of stuff.
It's like treasure hunt or um
Like it's a time, I don't know, it's a beautiful, it's like a book,
mhm,
right? And you have this tangible like collection of conversations.
mm.
And I think, you can always look back on it. And that's why I wanted to start the podcast because I wanted to connect deeper and I wanted to create a collection of stories. And I love sharing other people's stories and helping other people see their potential. And then it just naturally infused into like my personal stories when I went through my breakup last summer, which was one of the most challenging things. And that's when I started doing a lot more of those personal episodes. And that's when like that's when I started to see a lot of traction with the podcast. Like and got and was able to connect with people. And I haven't recorded recently just because I've been focused on some other things, but I think yeah, it's something that I'm really proud of and that I hope to revisit someday in the future.
It's a powerful podcast, everyone. Like,
Thank you.
if you want to hear authenticity at its rawest, like those solos that you have done, Kristine, super like right here. Like I wanted to cry. I was like, I wanted to cry.
Thank
Super
you.
vulnerable. So I think that's a gift that you have, is being vulnerable, and I keep it up. Like, don't break it, because I find that the more masks that I wear,
Mhm.
the heavier I feel, and it's harder to navigate life. Well, this is why I'm doing this too,
Mhm.
because I want to be as vulnerable as I can. And I feel like the more vulnerable I can be, the easier it is to be me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a lot of opportunities to not be vulnerable or to show up in a way that's inauthentic. And I think we need more containers to be vulnerable and share because a lot of like it's tough to be a human in this world.
Hmm.
And a lot of us are going through similar experiences and we just need space to talk about it. Again, like that weekend that we had, like there's a lot of beautiful healing that took place that weekend. And it was definitely an invitation to show up as ourselves. And I know for me, like I was just taken back to like you said that you thought I wanted to be alone because I kept like walking.
Yeah. First it was this. I went outside the tent because I just didn't want to stay in the tent any longer, because this lady was going haywire. She was going off. She was scaring me, basically. So she scared me away from the tent. And then I get close to her somewhere in this little foresty area, and then she moves again. This time, the third time she went to the pond. Reggie then
Yeah.
asked me if I wanted to go to the pond, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And then I see you. I'm like, oh my god, I bet she's gonna move again. You stayed there for a while, and then you left. And then I said, you know what? Never mind. But you know what's funny?
Uh,
I moved over there in your area again
yeah, you did.
because it's hot.
It did. And we found a good spot.
We did find a good spot.
But when you said that to me, I was like, oh, that's so interesting because what I want more than anything is to feel vulnerable. And I realized when you said that to me that I had a really big shield up and I maybe was moving because I was afraid of being vulnerable that weekend. So,
Um,
yeah. Also, I always like love to take people along with me in my journey. So I think there was an element of like we were in this beautiful space and I wanted to experience all of it and wanted you to come with me too. So
yeah, that was such a powerful experience. And I was also wondering why you only took the 2 grams.
yeah, I actually only did 1 gram.
Oh, 1 gram. Sorry.
Yeah. The intention was for everyone to do a heroic dose, which is 5 grams. And I initially was excited about that. And I think there were two main reasons when I got there that I just didn't feel ready for it. The first one being I like had traveled and I just physically felt like dehydrated and drained. And I think if you're going to do a heroic dose, you have to be really hydrated. There you go. There you go. Yes. So, number one rule with a macro dose, please make sure you're hydrated and well rested. So, I wasn't physically feeling the best. And um, second, I think that just where I'm at in my psychedelic journey, I can have a really profound experience with like 1 to 2 grams. And I felt like that was just like the perfect amount for me that day.
And don't you show people this like in your program?
Yeah,
Can you tell us more about that? And I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to do that 1 gram or 2 grams.
yeah. So you want me to like just talk about like how to maximize your experience?
Yeah, like for instance, you were there, you tap into your
Mm,
body, you asked your body,
yeah.
and you decided to take that route. And
Hmm.
why people should maybe start, low before
Sure.
even thinking about doing the macro.
Yeah. There's so many things to consider when deciding on your journey. And I think, yeah, you don't have to go all in to have a really profound experience. What's more important is that you have a really clear intention and that you've carved out a lot of space for yourself to feel. And I've had 1 gram dose experiences that have lasted several hours and have taken me deeper than even like my macro experiences. And I think like sometimes with the macro, with like the 5 gram heroic dose, um, what happens is people like start to chase that experience. And it just becomes about escapism, which is what we don't want. And so with a lower dosage and a micro experience, you can deepen almost. And for me, maybe I wanted to just deepen that weekend. Yeah, I've also been in situations where people have taken like 2 grams and it's still a lot for them to come back down. And so if you start with 2 grams, you can kind of build that baseline and then go from there. But if you just like dive in into a heroic dose, I mean, there's a lot of things. You're going to have a distorted reality. You're going to have an ego death. And if you are uneducated or unsupported in that experience, it can leave a bit of trauma. It can leave a really bad taste. And then that just defeats the purpose of psychedelics, which is to help us love ourselves more and to view the world in a more beautiful way.
That reminds me of my skydiving.
Yeah.
There's some people that come back from a skydive and said that was the worst thing ever. But then you have the other people
Mm,
that have done it and they're like, this is the most exciting thing they ever done. I look at it that way sometimes, and all I can say is that don't take it lightly
yeah.
to everyone.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just like you wouldn't take it lightly to skydive. I mean,
Yes. I think that that is a really beautiful and perfect way to put it. I I've had some clients who like I thought they were serious and ready to do this work, but then like they showed me they weren't, and of course the experience that unfolded was not super great.
hmm.
So, yeah, I think you do have to take it very like respect the plant, respect the process, right? Um, show the medicine that you're willing to meet it where it's at and that you're ready to do the work. It's kind of like a yoga practice too, right? You're not going to go to your first yoga class and do a handstand. I mean, maybe you will if you're like naturally, like if you're Simone Biles and you, I don't know, you were born to do it. But for most of us, where do we start? The beginner class. And then we work our way up and we keep coming back and practicing. And that's a really beautiful way to look at microdosing. We start small and then we continue to add working up to that handstand. But we have to keep practicing So taking the smaller doses support us in that journey to the macro dose.
Why did you decide to work with entrepreneurs with this psychedelic experience you're talking about, like the microdosing?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I have helped many people. I've taught yoga, I've hosted retreats. I was really trying to work with people that have gone through similar experiences with me with narcissistic abuse. And where I started to see the most joy for myself and the most tangible results were when I was working with people who were either trying to launch a business or had a business and they weren't sure where to go with it. And so I took a step back and I was like, hey, my most successful clients have been entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or people that have an idea that are really, really close and just want to take it to the next level. And again, like for me, like I've always loved the entrepreneur spirit and I love infusing like business ideas with spirituality. Like discipline isn't something you hear a lot about in yoga or spiritual circles, but infusing discipline with like getting to a handstand can be really powerful. Consistency with morning rituals and microdosing can be really powerful to feeling less anxious and more confident. So I love bringing both worlds together.
Mm. In yoga, they will call it practice, like meditation
Mm-hmm.
practice. And they go hand in hand, discipline and practice. Except discipline
Yeah.
for me is a little bit more permanent.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like habits, discipline, habits, habits, discipline, practice. They all come hand in hand. And if you do it for so long, it doesn't even feel like you're lifting that heavy weight anymore.
Yeah, I love that.
Hmm. And
I
why do you think you attract these entrepreneurs?
mm. Yeah, such a good question. I think um yeah, we find each other. And I think just again, like with my story being what it is, I mean, I remember in high school, that was my first entrepreneurial adventure when I created my own summer camp for kids. Like it's just always been a part of who I am. And I think as an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. A big part of it again is just putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and sharing your story and your struggles. Um, and so once you do that, you start to attract the people that you really want to work with. I think that I want to be like a little controversial
Please.
and say that like I get really frustrated when I see like spiritual business leaders who talk about how like things are just supposed to fall into place or that like just manifest it. If it's not working, give up. And like I take a lot of issue with that because I think there is joy in the growth. There's joy in the struggle. And the more we put ourselves in that position of wanting to grow, the more we learn about ourselves and continue to elevate. And I forget what part of the brain it is. Andrew Huberman talks about this on his podcast, the prefrontal
Hmm.
cortex. But people who have a bigger, more developed part of that brain, it's people who are constantly learning and putting themselves in new places and new situations where they grow. And we live in a world where like there's so many opportunities to stay in the comfort zone and to not grow. And I feel very passionately that like putting yourself in those positions, even if you don't get that outcome that you were hoping for, again, that's your success because you're learning what's possible for yourself and you're proving to yourself what's possible. But the biggest thing is to remember is that you're never going to learn that if you don't try. And I think like for me, it's always like I want to remind people of that not as a way of scaring them, but to be like, hey, I see you. I see how badly you want this, and I know that it's possible. And I just want to invite you to go on this journey because I think it could be really, really cool.
Yeah. You know, the part of the reason that, I mean, I did this before that happened, and I'm about to explain to you what happened. And I wanted to be as vulnerable with you guys, and I want to talk about the wellness industry and all the cool stuff. But I definitely know that the struggles help us move the needle forward faster. Those traumatic experiences that you can easily fix it with drinking, smoking,
Mhm.
but instead you transmute it into something more valuable that'll help others like this. And I can say that the reason why I've been uploading so damn much is because I had my own traumas like recently. Same thing just like you, relationship. And instead of entering that victim mentality, I decided to use that energy to do something valuable for the world. So I wonder, in your experience, were you able to do something like that, or is it just me?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry to hear that. And I applaud you wholeheartedly for taking this experience and alchemizing it into something that helps people and makes the world a better place. Because it doesn't always make sense why we go through some of the things we go through. But if we can learn and heal and help others along the way, then at some point we're going to be like, oh, that's why I went through that. So that I could help others. And yeah, I think that it sucks when shit happens. It really does. And it, I still have like my moments where I drop in to pity. Like, okay, I'm going to feel bad about myself for this for a little bit. And that's okay. But as you said, like the important part is not getting stuck there. Like, I have every reason to be disgruntled with this life, even for myself, recent events with my family and my parents. And I'm like, I literally say to the universe, I'm like, can you just give me a fucking break? Like, I can't handle this. And I think the one thing I remind myself and I want to remind you is that sometimes these experiences are not meant to defeat us, but to show you how strong you are and what's possible. And if you can overcome this, then you're going to inspire so many others to overcome whatever it is they're going through. And so for me, that's why I do it. And that's why I continue to build, is because I want to show people that, yes, you can overcome this. And yes, you can change your destiny and you can have the most amazing life, the life that you always thought was possible.
Now I'm thinking about free will.
Mm.
I'm getting very philosophical now. But anyways,
Yeah.
so one thing you talked about, I I I keep referencing your podcast because literally that's all I've been doing this past week is just listening to you, getting myself ready for this interview. But I don't know if your guru or maybe your spiritual teacher, his name is Yogananda. And
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
things you said was you asked him, why do we suffer? Why
Mm.
do we bring ourselves here to suffer? So, what was your revelation in that for the audience to hear?
Yeah. Yogananda Paramahansa Yogananda Self Realization Fellowship. He's no longer here in the physical realm, but I do like to visit his beautiful sanctuary in the Pacific Palisades called Lake Shrine. And yeah, I had a beautiful psychedelic experience where I asked him like, why do we suffer? And I'm trying to think back to that. Um, But I think my big takeaways were, well, again, suffering is how we grow and evolve. And then also when we suffer, if we don't suffer, then we don't appreciate the good times and the beauty. And I think that some of us on this planet suffer a little bit more than others so that we can help others evolve on their journey. Um, and the crazy thing is that one of my favorite yoga teachers talks about suffering, and he says that, even if you have everything, you can still suffer because it's all in your perception. So I think, we do come to this life. I do believe we choose to come here, to learn our karmic lessons and to evolve. And yogis have believed that you continue in each lifetime going through suffering and your karmic lessons. Eventually, you learn them all and you transcend. And so I think suffering is definitely a little bit of free will. It's a choice. Like you can choose to suffer through this life, or you can see it as an opportunity to grow. And I think like you even spoke about this on the weekend, in our weekend together. You said like, how do you want to play this game? Right? Do you want to suffer, or do you want to choose to like see every person as a mirror, as an opportunity to grow and evolve? And it's the spiral again. It's the spiral of suffering. I'm kind of rambling now, but a lot of us suffer because we have expectations, and we have expectations of others and expectations of this life. And so one thing I've been just trying to work with is this idea of having really low expectations but high standards. So I have no expectations that you are going to meet me where I'm at because you're at a completely different part of your journey. But if I just accept you for who you are, then I'm okay. If I accept me for who I am, I'll just say, okay. And then we continue. And then eventually we find our way back to someone that's more aligned with our values and a vibrational match. So I know that that was really deep, but I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes, that answered my question. Thank you for rambling,
Yeah.
as you say. I didn't say it, you did.
Yeah.
Define power, and
Mm.
another thing is, why are you afraid of your own power?
Ooh. So power is really like your own agency and your own ability to believe in what is possible, right? So if you're powerless, you're like, you wake up every morning, you're like, okay, just going through the motions, like not really paying attention to what you're doing, just doing it. Power is waking up and being like, today is a great day. I'm going to record a podcast with Alejandro. I'm going to walk to the farmer's market. I'm going to get my favorite things from the farmer's market. And then I'm going to do all the things that I said I'm going to do, and trust that this is all moving the needle in the right direction. I think that's power. And I think what's happening right now is in the collective, we have a lot of divine feminine power awakening. This is also known as Shakti. And the divine feminine power is all about creativity and playfulness, right? In a lot of cultures, there's always that element of like creating and being in community. And so I think as a society, we've kind of gone away from that, right? COVID isolated us, and there's a lot of narcissism in the world. Everyone's looking out for themselves and they're worried about, how am I getting ahead? What am I doing to earn? And again, not like a bad thing for this physical realm. It's not bad to earn money or to build like your empire. But there has to be that balance, the yin and the yang. Um, and so I think that for a while for me, I was afraid of becoming like this masculine power because I've had a lot of poor experiences with masculine power. My father and his alcoholism and his emotional abuse. My first employer, the guy who I told you about who was doing not so good things. My former partner who was a narcissist and abandoned me at 12,000 feet near the top of Mount Whitney. Like I have had plenty of examples of power being abused. And like for me, that makes me afraid that I'm going to turn around and do the same thing to other people, that I'm going to take advantage of them. Not like because I want to, but just because it's been something that I've experienced and it might be a programming or conditioning that I have to overcome. So for me, the last few months, I've been working with the intention of power just to see what it feels like. And I feel like I'm repairing my relationship with power.
Mm. And we can even ask ourselves deeper questions. What does power mean to me? What what kind of values can I put in place when we're talking about power, right? What is something I will not do when it comes to power? But what I'm trying to say is that we can define power for ourselves. Just
Yeah.
like that ex, he defined his
Hmm.
power in that way. And maybe all that happened was unconscious, and he doesn't see it because he wasn't able to figure out what that means for him. Kind of goes back to the conscious and unconscious
Hmm.
way of being with people.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that like unconsciously we might be hurting. And so when we have pain, the only thing we can sometimes do is like maybe hurt others. And so we use our power to do that because we feel powerless because of the things that happen to us. So the only way to respond to that is to like replicate it. And so like literally when you talk about suffering, I mean that's the suffering of the world. Like the world is hurting, but like instead of trying to heal it, we just keep perpetuating more suffering and using power as a force to hurt others and to like say, see, I'm right. Because it's like people just want something to alleviate that pain. And like I want to give people a big hug
Mm-hmm.
and some mushrooms and be like, it'll be
Mm-hmm.
okay. But unfortunately, I don't think that we're quite at that place yet. I think more and more people are being open to it. Um, but it seems too simple sometimes. um, and it takes work. So,
It does take work, yeah.
um, yeah,
As you know it, as I know it.
yeah, hmm,
And that to me creates empathy.
yeah. Hmm. When you do the work,
Mm-hmm.
you can be more empathetic because empathy literally is to understand. So if you understand what you're going through, then you can understand what others are going through. Oh my God, I think we're solving the world's problems today.
No, yeah. 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 And that creates love, acceptance, and they don't know. 95% is unconscious, things we don't know about ourselves. And 5% is conscious, what we do know. So that's the empathy state where I'm at right now.
Mm, I love it. It's beautiful.
And when you were talking about your relationship, maybe 3 days ago, I went to watch a movie, and it's called "And It Ends with Us," and I think that's a perfect movie for you.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I don't know if I should. I don't. I'm not gonna tell everybody, but just know that It has something to do with. Well, all right, I'll tell you a little bit, but
Okay.
it has it has something to do with two men. I wouldn't say fighting over, but they want the same girl.
Okay.
When you were telling that story on your podcast, that you saw your ex, you were coming, you were walking up the stairs, you're with this guy, and all of a sudden you see your ex come down. I was like, holy shit. I just watched this movie. uh, but what was going through your mind? Because that's just like a crazy coincidence. Crazy. Because you're over here healing from this past experience, and all of a sudden it comes up. It's almost like saying, it's almost like the world is testing you.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. So I've been staying at this Airbnb and a gentleman arrives. There's like four bedrooms. And so there's always this like rotating cast of characters. And there was a gentleman that arrived and we ended up sharing wine. And then he's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And like, I wasn't supposed to be at the Culver Stairs, but like we decided to get up early and go climb the Culver Stairs. It's this awesome place in Culver City in LA. I love to do it. And like we had literally just gone down our first flight and then I'm on my way up and like I look up and there's my ex and we have not spoken at that point in over 6 months. And I just was like, oh my God. Like what the
That's crazy.
like 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Like, and his hair looked crazy. And I was like, what's wrong with you? And so that went through my head. And then we passed each other and I just kept my head down and then met up with the guy I was with at the top. And then we started to come back down and then he was coming back up and his son was with him. So honestly, like for my heart, like the biggest thing was like I wanted to say hi to his son because I still love that kid. I think about him every day. Um, but then when we passed, we definitely locked eyes and just said like good morning and that was it. Um, and then we passed each other again and just I kept my head down and for me it was just like this moment of like showing him that he doesn't have his power over me anymore. And so that was a really beautiful moment and like and then you know I left with that guy and that was it. So for me like that day it was like almost like the message I kept getting was like look you won, you know? Like you don't have to keep fighting this battle. You won. Like he doesn't have power over you. You don't feel like you need to talk to him. You can just move on. Um, but it was still really, really weird. Like, of all the people, there's 10 million people in Los Angeles County. And like, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen him like twice since then. We haven't spoken, but it's, it's, it's an interesting dynamic. And I wonder sometimes if there's some unresolved energy in between our souls just for the fact that we keep like randomly seeing each other. Again, LA is like massive and there's 10 million people here. Um, but
You know what helps?
what's that?
Similar interests.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine you love saladas. Y'all both go at the same time.
Right.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to switch it to something else now.
Yeah. No, but that's true. And I think I shared that with you guys. Like,
Hmm.
I love hiking, but that was a big part of our relationship. And like, sometimes I'm afraid to go in the mountains by myself. I carry my knife and my bear spray.
Man, that's tough. That's tough. You ran, like you said, 3 times, right? You ran
Hmm.
into him 3 times.
Yeah.
In those moments, you're saying you feel fear?
No. Um, I didn't feel fear that day on the steps. It was just like a more like, what the fuck?
Mm.
Like, I didn't feel fear. The second time, like, I was literally driving and he was pulling out of like a parking lot. And like, for whatever reason, I just like looked to the right and like there he was. And then like he tailed me on my car, which was kind of creepy. And like it almost seemed like he was afraid of me.
Mm,
And I was like, why are you afraid of me?
mm,
Um, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about it on my Instagram, what I went through. So, you know, narcissists don't like to be exposed.
mhm.
They don't like anyone to think that they're a bad guy. And then the third time I just saw him like running and like, yeah, from from what I could tell, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but like it looked like he got a little chubby. So, you know, maybe his karma is coming
Yeah,
around.
well,
Yeah.
jeez, yeah, that's what happened to me. I was talking to this girl, and nothing ever happened because I wanted to take my time. I wanted to try something different, and I took too long to ask her out, and instead she ended up going with someone else. What happened next is I switched jobs. It's been like 2 years. I see her again at this coffee shop. I'm looking at her. I'm like, phew, dodge a bullet on that one. I think if people analyze and really think over what they really want, then you know it's gonna work out.
Absolutely.
You know, asking these hard questions, getting vulnerable, and always pay attention to your gut feeling.
Mhm.
And I think we forget and we get into a relationship unconsciously, and we only get into it on what we know, which is stuff that been taught from mama and daddy. Those are
Mhm.
the things that we know.
So true. And like, yeah, it just comes back to like knowing yourself, knowing your values, being vulnerable enough to know who you are. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to keep manifesting the person that was your parents. And maybe some, not everyone has awful parents.
Hmm.
Like, I just want to be clear on
Yeah.
that. Some people have really great parents. And I always tell those people, like, that's awesome. You're so lucky. Like, give them a hug. But yeah, so being willing to do the work on yourself is really the pathway forward to attracting a more long-term partner, because the more you know yourself, the more equipped you are to be in partnership with someone, unless you find someone that is so willing to like commit to you as you change, because you're going to change. And I have friends, and someone on that weekend even talked about that, you know, when people go through their spiritual awakening, sometimes their partners are not going to be okay with it. And it's really tough.
Yeah. You change too much. You change
Hmm.
way too fast. You change your perspective. You change the way you dress yourself. You change so much that he gets scared or she
Yeah.
gets scared. I used to do this, but I will tell people, why are you eating that? Or I'll say,
Mm,
why are you wearing that?
mm,
He's no longer that guy that I once knew. And so now I'm blaming
mm.
and shaming that person for doing that.
Like you're seeing other people do what you once did.
In the past, I used to do that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's because that person is no longer meeting my needs.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Because your needs are going to change as you do.
Mhm. So just imagine that relationship
Yeah.
starts to shift because the other
Hmm.
person, the other partner is not ready.
It's so true. And like, even in through the lens of narcissism, like narcissists are highly insecure, and they can't handle it if like you're suddenly outshining them. But yeah, and I think a lot of us, even when our needs change, we have to practice saying what we need. and being really clear about it. Because I think sometimes we continue to compromise our needs, or we say, oh, that's not important to me. And then the resentment builds because we're not being honest about what we need. And that just like continues to like fester in the relationship, leading to like ultimately a breaking point.
Hmm. I think this is a good time to end because I can hear the blower now.
I was just gonna say, can
I
you hear
can hear it. It's like
that?
hurting my ears right now. Ow.
Oh
I'm
no.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay.
To
That
be
to be
continued.
continue, right? All right.
Yeah.
So, how would you like to end this, Christine? Just again, before we end it, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you taking the time out, bringing your spirituality in this room, creating this safe space for us to talk. Thank you so much. What would you like to tell our audience? Like, is there a service that you provide? Because I know you're a psychedelic coach, so maybe that's something you want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Alejandro, thank you so much for having me on today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope some of what I shared resonates with your audience. And I would love to connect with your audience further. You can look me up on Instagram. I am healing.Kristine. It's Kristine with a K. And just send me a DM. I would love to chat. And, psychedelics, there's so many ways to work with them. So maybe we just hop on a call and chat about what the best way to work together would be, or how I can at least point you in the right direction for your journey. And I invite you to just follow along and share what resonated for you today, whether you're navigating a new chapter, going through a breakup, or you're on a spiritual quest. I love hearing from you. I love hearing about different stories and how I can continue to be of service in this world. So thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from y'all.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next. Namaste.
All right.
Namaste.
Namaste.